Critical thinking skills. What is critical thinking? Critical thinking is a form of active, reflective, and reasoned thinking that emphasizes the cognitive processes used to identify, analyze, and evaluate arguments. Critical thinkers strive to achieve the best outcomes by way of problem solving and decision making based on rational processes. Critical thinking is reflective, mostly self-directed, and can be applied in both personal life and professional contexts. In a personal context, critical thinking enables individuals to analyze assumptions, distinctions, implications that underlie claims or arguments. In a professional context, critical thinking is essential for people in positions of power or authority because it allows them to analyze and evaluate the concerns that may be raised by their constituents. Why is critical thinking important? Critical thinkers ask questions, evaluate information, generate and test ideas, solve problems, consider multiple perspectives, and make informed decisions. Because critical thinkers strive to form rational opinions, they are able to make thoughtful decisions about their own lives and the lives of others. Critical thinking is important for people in positions of authority because it allows them to analyze and respond effectively to the challenges that their constituents may pose. Critical thinkers can weigh up the possible outcomes of their decisions, and are capable of responding appropriately to new information or setbacks. People who think critically are also better at learning from experience because they learn how to test ideas for rationality and validity. What is logic? Logic is the study of the principles according to which true or valid arguments are constructed. It is a formal system that includes the study of the syntactical structures appropriate to argumentative discourse and the study of inference. What is fallacious reasoning? Fallacious reasoning, also known as reasoning flaws and logical fallacies, occurs when an arguer conducts their argument in such a way that the argument fails to satisfy one or more of the premises, misapplies a rule of inference, or fails to maintain consistency. What is an argument? An argument is a series of statements intended to establish a proposition. Arguments are constructed around claims, which are assertions that can be true or false and support various kinds of reasoning. What are the characteristics of logical reasoning? Logical reasoning is truth-seeking, reliable, informative, clear, objective and fair. These characteristics can be used to identify whether or not a piece of reasoning is logical. 1. Is the argument truth-seeking? Does it seek to establish the truth, or is it intended to misdirect the listener? 2. Is it reliable? Is it likely that someone making this argument would be able to consistently make the same kind of argument again and again? Does this argument rely on certain information that may not necessarily be true? 3. Is it informative? Is it the case that more true premises gives us a greater chance of concluding that a conclusion is true? 4. Is it clear? Are there some statements in this argument where we are not sure what the statement means, or how they relate to other statements? Does this argument rely on certain information that may not necessarily be true? Are there some statements in this argument where we are not sure what the statement means, or how they relate to other statements? Does this argument rely on certain information that may not necessarily be true? 5. Is it objective? Arguments do not take sides. They can work with all kinds of points of view, including points of view that we don't agree with. 6. Is it fair? Are all different points of view included in the argument, or are some points of view left out? Do people presenting an argument have a reason to be biased in this argument? What is critical thinking and problem solving? We all encounter problems in our daily lives. Most of these problems can be solved through critical thinking and problem solving. Critical thinking is the ability to think clearly, logically and rationally about a situation. Critical thinking, it is the reflective thinking that requires conscious effort and involves complex cognitive processes resulting in effective problem-solving skills, responsible decision-making and satisfactory performance. Critical thinking facilitates the effective transfer of knowledge, thus encouraging multiculturalism in an open society. Problem solving, it is a process aimed at finding solutions to problems. It involves generating as many viable alternatives as possible before any decision or action is made. Critical thinking and problem solving are very different skills. A person can learn how to solve problems without acquiring the habit of critical thinking, but a critical thinker must be able to solve problems since every thought or idea is a potential problem. Since critical thinkers are both persons who think well as persons who think about their thoughts, they are better problem solvers. Critical thinkers are also more flexible and imaginative in their approach to problems, which is key to success in a complex world. Problem solving involves the following steps. 1. Recognize the problem. An individual has to recognize that he or she has a problem and needs a solution. This requires good problem-finding skills and education. 2. Organize the information about the problem. Once an individual recognizes that he or she has a problem, they need to gather specific information about that problem in order to decide how serious it is, what its causes are, if these are known, how long it has existed, etc. Sources of information include observation, data from records, the internet, and discussion with experts. 3. Generate alternative solutions. Many problem solvers get stuck at this step because they can't think of any solutions or the solution seems to be too difficult to implement. Good problem solvers generate a number of alternative solutions. They may be original to that problem solver or they may have been borrowed from others. In addition, the solution must fit with other goals of the problem solver. 4. Evaluate alternative solutions. Problem solvers have to evaluate how well each alternative solution satisfies all objectives of the problem-solving process and help solve the problem in question. Some of the criteria used to evaluate alternative solutions are: feasibility, is the solution possible and likely? Objections, does anyone have any objections, legal, ethical, etc., to this solution? Practicality/aptness, can the problem solver implement this solution and expect success? Cost/benefit analysis, is the cost of implementing this solution worth the benefit to be gained by solving the problem? Can other activities receive a better return on investment? Operability, will this solution actually work or must it be modified in some way? 5. Implement the solution. The problem solver must select a specific alternative solution and then actually implement it to solve the problem. Successful implementation requires that all of the critical thinking components are online, while implementing the chosen solution, plus creativity in making minor modifications of the initial solution so that it works for this particular problem. Finally, the problem solver must evaluate whether or not the solution worked and how well it worked. 6. Study of results. The final step in the problem-solving process is to study the results and perhaps try again with a modified version of the initial solution if it did not work as expected. If this does not work, then the problem solver moves back to an earlier step and tries different alternatives. The whole process of borrowing ideas from others, modifying them for a particular situation, trying them out and evaluating their results is called problem solving. Critical thinking skills are used in every step of this process as well as all steps involved in collecting information about the problem, combining relevant information and making plans to implement the solution. The quality of these critical thinking operations determines whether the end result will be successful or not in solving the initial problem. What are some key things that will help individuals become successful problem solvers? 1. Developing the habit of observing and asking questions. 2. Continually learning more about their interests, including self-interests, values, concerns, as well as technical knowledge related to their focus area, example, students in school, employees on a job. 3. Thinking creatively so that they can combine ideas in new ways. They do this by borrowing ideas from various sources, including people they know, family, co-workers, books and articles written by experts in their field of interest and others. 4. Developing the capacity for logical thinking including observation, data collection, analysis and evaluation as well as forming plans and implementing those plans. 5. thinking of creative new ways to solve problems by combining ideas from various sources in their discipline and on other topics. Creativity often requires the ability to generate a number of solutions, assess them against one another as well as against criteria that have meaning for the problem solver. How does one evaluate and contrast the merits of alternative solutions to problems? Try to formulate the problem in a way that allows you to identify alternative solutions. Then decide which solution will work best and on what basis you can make this decision. The important thing is to realize that there may be no perfect solution because all solutions have limitations of one kind or another. When presented with a challenging problem that requires a solution, it is often helpful to identify what appears to be the main requirements or constraints or limitations on the selection of an appropriate solution. This can be done by posing questions such as 1. What must be excluded? What elements cannot be included in this problem-solving situation? 2. What possible solutions come to mind? 3. Are there any particular conditions that must be met or some states of affairs, conditions, that must exist if we are to identify the good solution and choose it over other acceptable alternatives? Each time you ask yourself a question like the ones above, your brain forms a hypothesis or possible solution to the problem. These are often based on facts that you already know and they may be related to other experiences you have had in similar situations. 4. Think about how your proposed solution would work out. Will it really do what is required? Looking at this from a number of different angles, using a variety of criteria and asking other people what they think may help you make up your mind. 5. Finally, be sure to justify your solution by providing logical reasons why it is the best or most appropriate one for this situation. Be ready to defend this choice if necessary. What is the difference between a critical thinker, creative thinker, and an intuitive thinker? Critical thinking, a person who continually seeks to build knowledge in a field and apply it when solving problems. The goal of critical thinkers is not simply the accumulation of information, but rather an understanding of how that information fits together into meaningful patterns. Intuitive thinker, a person who uses his or her intuition to solve problems. The goal of intuitive thinkers is to predict and control events in a field. They are more interested in the process of thinking than in acquiring knowledge for its own sake. Creative thinker, a person who uses insightful or ingenious solutions when solving problems. Creative thinkers will often form a hypothesis, then test it using data, facts or other information. If the initial hypothesis fails to adequately explain the new findings, they will often reformulate their original idea in an attempt to build a more meaningful understanding of a situation. How to improve critical thinking? Critical thinking is a form of active, reflective and reasoned thinking that emphasizes the cognitive processes used to identify, analyze, and evaluate arguments. If you want to improve your critical thinking skills, then here are 10 ways how. 1. Understand the difference between knowledge and opinion. You need to first understand the difference between knowledge and opinion. Opinion is what you feel or believe about something, whereas knowledge is based on facts and evidence. When we make a decision or take action based on an opinion, then there's always that nagging doubt in your mind, what if I'm wrong? But guess what? You're never going to be completely sure you're right about everything, but that's okay. Accepting uncertainty is the first step to effective critical thinking and learning. 2. Face your fears and practice self-control. If fear holds you back or stops you from acting, then try to face them in a controlled setting. Stop yourself if you are about to do something stupid or harmful, and then think about why you are doing it. What is the consequence likely to be? Seek out alternative action, and practice that until it becomes a habit. 3. Learn how your mind tricks you into irrational thinking. Our minds have thousands of biases which cause us to create patterns and believe lies. The media is a good example of this, as well as the gossiping neighbors down the street. We all have our own biases, and it's important to know what they are in order to be able to overcome them. For example, if you believe that college students are smarter than high school students, then you will be more likely to hire a college student over a high school student because you believe that their intelligence is superior, even though this may not be true. 4. Understand how to effectively evaluate information. How do we know what is credible and what's not? Which opinions are based on fact and which are not? What sources should we consult when trying to find out something about the world? These questions will lead you to understand that credibility isn't always an indicator of validity. For example, scholarly articles and textbooks may be valid sources of information, but they're also well known for their bias. So how do you choose? Get your news from a variety of sources that include advocacy groups, scientific organizations, magazines and newspaper reporters, investigative journalists, etc. 5. Find the argument. Before you can learn how to critically analyze an argument, you need to know how one works. Here's a simple example. The government should repeal the law requiring students to wear seatbelts in school buses because 1. Students distract the driver, and 2. They will not use them anyway. What is wrong with this argument? A. Assumptions. The first assumption is that wearing a seatbelt distracts the driver. This has not been proven to be true, and may in fact have no correlation to distracted driving whatsoever. B. Inappropriate comparison. The second assumption is that students won't use the seatbelts when they are required to wear them. However, even if we assume this to be true, it doesn't make sense because the government is not planning on making students wear their seatbelts 24/7. 6. Learn how to spot logical fallacies. Once you understand how an argument works, you need to learn how to spot logical fallacies. Logical fallacies are mistakes in reasoning that can lead us to false conclusions. 7. Question your sources. How do we know that the knowledge that we source from others is true? If a web page says one thing, then how do you know it's not written in good faith? On the other hand, if an article was published in a major newspaper or magazine, why should you believe it? You won't be able to find answers to these questions unless you start doing some research on your own. 8. Don't be a know-it-all. You may read this and get defensive, thinking that nobody is as smart as you, but I'm not talking about intelligence here. I'm talking about the ability to say, I don't know. By saying you don't know something, you acknowledge that there is a gap in your learning and prevent yourself from sounding like an idiot. Your lack of knowledge is not only acceptable but also to be expected since no one knows everything. 9. Don't be afraid of being wrong. Sometimes we are wrong about something even if we think we are right. Nevertheless, this will not make us go bald or turn us into a toad, so don't worry. What will happen is that you'll lose a bit of your ego and realize how little you know about the world. 10. Be curious about things. Curiosity is one of the most important qualities you can have in life. It opens your mind to new possibilities and helps you make sense of this crazy world. And curiosity isn't just about asking questions, it's also about coming up with answers on your own too. 11. Learn about the origins of your thoughts and feelings. How do we know why we have certain emotions or beliefs in the first place? Did they come from our parents, the media, memes on Facebook, logical reasoning? This is an important step towards critical thinking because it can help us identify what may be triggering certain beliefs or emotions within us. 12. Don't be a slave to your emotions. While feelings are sometimes wild, it's important that we don't act upon them impulsively. If you feel angry at someone, then take a moment to ask yourself why you feel this way before making any rash decisions. This will help you make smarter and healthier choices for yourself. 13. Think about what you're told. There are two ways to critically analyze an argument. The first is to push it aside and not think about what the person is saying at all, the typical approach that most people take. This will allow you to avoid any sort of cognitive dissonance, but it doesn't help you learn anything new. The second, and much better method, is to start thinking about why you are being told something or believe in it in the first place. Ask yourself questions like: A. Does this make sense? Really think about if what you're hearing makes any sense at all, i.e., does the source have a good argument to back it up? B. What is the source's agenda? If you don't know who the source is, do some research. If your friend says something, then ask yourself what he or she might have to gain from telling you this information. C. Is this a logical fallacy? Are they trying to confuse me by using an emotional appeal or a logical fallacy? D. What else can this mean? Try to push the information in question to the limits of its interpretation by asking yourself other questions. For example, if someone tells you that, you should always do what your parents say because they know best, ask yourself, what if my parent is wrong, or am I a child forever? Do I have to do what my parents say for the rest of my life? 14. Think about how you feel. Try not to fall into the trap of believing that your feelings or emotions are a way forward, but rather think deeply about them and ask yourself some questions like: A. Am I acting on a whim? In other words, are you taking action right away before thinking about it logically? B. What are my emotions telling me? As mentioned above, don't simply let an emotion take over, try to understand why you feel this way. 15. Make connections. With all of the information that we see and hear on a daily basis, it is easy to get overwhelmed by all the information out there. However, our brains are wired to make connections between different pieces of information, so look for links between things that you learn and start making those associations. This will help your brain make sense of what you're learning and connect it with what you already know. 16. Have an open mind. It's important that we keep our minds open to ideas and possibilities even if we don't agree with them. This is especially true when it comes to new information or evidence that challenges your currently held beliefs. Your current beliefs may be wrong or incomplete, so give yourself an opportunity to change your mind by keeping an open mind. I hope these tips will help more people understand how to critically analyze an argument and learn how to apply critical thinking to everyday situations. Conclusion. Critical thinking involves more than just asking yourself questions about a situation and comparing possible solutions. It also involves the ability to be aware of your thoughts and judgments as they develop and evaluate them in light of available evidence. To avoid making premature or faulty decisions, individuals must be willing to 1. Consider all of the evidence relevant to a problem. 2. Do so without allowing your conclusions or recommendations to be influenced by bias. This means removing or at least being aware of any preconceived notions, biases, or stereotypes you might have about the issue. It also means looking for additional information and making sure that what you know is accurate and reliable. 3. Be willing to change an opinion if it is based on inaccurate or inadequate information. The individual who engages in critical thinking attempts to think through a problem clearly and completely before deciding what to do about it. To aid this process of analysis, he or she takes the time to ask and answer questions about all of the available information. To better understand a problem, he or she often makes a list of its key elements and then evaluates each one individually, comparing it with other relevant facts. We might also add that critical thinking involves more than just asking questions and framing hypotheses prior to making decisions. It also involves the willingness and ability to honestly acknowledge flaws in a solution, evaluate all available options, and accept responsibility for one's own critical thinking and decision-making.